Have you ever watched someone succeed and felt something you couldn't name? Not jealousy exactly. Something quieter, deeper, like a bruise you didn't know was there until someone pressed on it. It's the realization that they had something you never did. Someone who believed in them before they believed in themselves. A hand on their shoulder. A voice that said, "You belong here," before they had any proof. And you had the same dream, the same hunger, maybe even the same talent, but no hand, no voice, no door held open. Same ambition, same hours, different starting line. This is Sunny English Bite. Today we are going to look at why that difference, the one between you and them, may not be what you think it is. And by the end of this video, you will understand a concept from Carl Jung that explains why the people who had the least support are often building something the supported ones never can. But first, there is a trap hidden in your path. Two of them, actually, and most people fall into one without ever realizing it. We will get to those. But before we go deeper, let's learn 3 words, 3 psychology words that will guide us through today's story. The first word is shadow. In psychology, your shadow is the part of you that you have pushed away, the emotions you were told not to feel, the dreams you were told not to chase, the version of yourself that got buried under who you had to become just to survive. Everyone has a shadow, but most people never meet theirs because they are too busy, too surrounded, too distracted to look. The second word is solitude. Solitude means being alone, but by choice. Not lonely, not abandoned, just quietly present with yourself. Loneliness feels empty, but solitude feels full. Imagine sitting by a window with a cup of tea and the gentle feeling that you are exactly where you need to be. That is solitude. The third word is individuation. This word comes directly from Carl Jung. Individuation is the process of becoming your true self. Not the self others expect you to be, not the self that fits in, but the whole, complete version of you that was always there, waiting underneath the surface. Jung believed this was the most important journey a person could ever take. And here is the part that changes everything. He believed that journey could only begin when everything external falls away. Now let's begin. You already know the feeling of coming home after a long day with people and feeling completely drained, not because they were unkind, but because something in you was working overtime just to keep up. This is not just a feeling, it is biology. Neuroscientists have found that introverted brains respond more strongly to a chemical called acetylcholine. It is the chemical of calm focus, of deep thought, of quiet satisfaction. While extroverted brains run on dopamine, the chemical of excitement, of social reward, of external stimulation. That is why a loud room fills some people with energy and drains every drop of yours. Your brain is not broken. It is simply designed for depth instead of speed, for solitude instead of noise. Knowing this matters, because what comes next will make much more sense once you understand that your need for quiet is not a flaw. It is the door to everything Jung discovered about how real personality is built. Think about what it actually means to grow up with support. Someone told you that you were smart before your grades proved it. Someone told you that you were strong before life tested it. A mentor pointed you in a direction, and you trusted it, not because you understood the path, but because you trusted the person. And when doubt appeared, because doubt always appears, there was a voice outside of you ready to catch it, ready to say, "You are doing fine, keep going." Over time, that voice became invisible. The confidence started to feel like it came from inside you, like it was always yours. But it wasn't. Not originally. It was external support doing its work so quietly you never noticed. And here is something most people never think about. Support that holds you up also holds you in place. It means your sense of self was never tested alone, never asked to stand in a room with no mirrors and still know its own shape. The psychologist Carl Jung understood this deeply, not just as an idea in a book, but as something he lived through. In 1913, Jung broke from Sigmund Freud, the most powerful figure in psychology at the time. Over months of growing tension, he lost his mentor, his community, his professional standing. Every piece of external support around his identity collapsed. What remained was Jung alone with his own mind, and no one left to tell him his ideas were worth anything. But what he discovered in that solitude became the foundation of modern depth psychology. He didn't come out of it weaker. He came out knowing exactly who he was, because he had to find out without anyone's help. And this is where it gets personal. Do you know that silence too? Have you sat in a room where no one was cheering for you, where no one was watching? Maybe it was a night when you looked around and realized there was no one to call, no one who would truly understand what you were carrying. Or maybe it was quieter than that, a slow recognition, over months or years, that the world you are moving through does not have a space already shaped for you. You may have told yourself it doesn't matter. You may have told yourself you would simply work harder, but underneath the discipline and the late nights, a question lives quietly, one you haven't spoken out loud. What if not having support doesn't just make things harder? What if it makes certain things genuinely impossible? That question is not weakness, it is honesty. And what I am about to share with you is the most important part of this video, because it changes what that question actually means. That silence you have been sitting in is not empty. Something lives inside it. Jung called it the shadow. Remember our first word? Your shadow is not only your darkness. It is also everything you haven't become yet. The potential that was never encouraged. The voice inside you that was never given permission to speak. Most people never meet their shadow directly. Their busy lives create enough noise to keep it at a comfortable distance. But when support disappears, the noise thins with it, and the shadow steps forward. This is where two traps appear. And I promised you at the beginning that we would talk about them, because nearly everyone who walks your path falls into one. The first trap is bitterness, not the honest recognition that your circumstances are harder. That part is simply true. Bitterness is what happens when that truth hardens into identity, when "this is unfair" slowly becomes "so nothing is possible for me." Maybe you have felt it. The resentment you have been calling motivation, the grief you have been calling ambition, the anger that fuels your work but never fully goes away. Bitterness feels like clarity. You think you are seeing the world as it truly is, but you are inside a locked room, and everything that enters only confirms what you already believe. The second trap is the opposite and equally dangerous. Call it the fortress. Somewhere along the way, you stopped reaching out because reaching hurt too much. And then, without noticing, you built a philosophy around the not reaching. I don't need anyone. I am stronger alone. Needing people is weakness. Your solitude stopped being a choice and became a wall, but armor that keeps everything out also keeps everything locked in. Jung himself, after losing Freud, did not celebrate his aloneness. He held on to small anchors, his family, his patients, quiet connections that kept him tethered to reality. He understood solitude is powerful, but only when you choose it, not when it becomes your prison. So here is the question that matters more than any other in this video. If bitterness is one wall and the fortress is the other, where do you walk? You hold two truths at the same time. Truth one, your path is genuinely harder. You were given less, and that is real. Truth two, even inside that unfairness, you still have the power to build. You still carry the right to become. Not one truth or the other, both held together in honest tension. And that tension is not a problem. It is the exact space where individuation begins. Remember that word? Individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Jung discovered that this process almost never starts in comfort. It starts in necessity. It starts when every external support falls away, and you are left alone with no choice but to look inward. In his book, The Development of Personality, Jung wrote these exact words: "The developing personality obeys no caprice, no command, no insight, only brute necessity." Brute necessity, not gentle encouragement, not favorable conditions, not someone telling you that you are enough. The raw, unavoidable necessity of having no one to lean on except yourself. And this is where your story becomes something that most people will never understand. Because look at what you have already done. Every decision you made without someone confirming it was the right one. That was individuation happening. Every failure that landed on you without a net underneath. That was proof of something most supported people will never have to test. Every night you sat with doubt alone, and no voice came to quiet it. But you still got up the next morning. That was not just survival. That was your personality being forged through necessity, exactly as Jung described. The person who received confidence knows what confidence feels like. They can wear it, they can perform it. But the person who built confidence alone in the silence, with no voice saying, "You are enough," that person knows what confidence is made of. And that knowledge cannot be taught, cannot be given. It can only be built through the exact conditions you have been living in. The people who had support may have risen faster, but they built on ground that someone else can take away. What you built stands on your own ground, tested before it was trusted, proven before it was named. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are in the middle of your own individuation, the process Jung considered the highest achievement of the human psyche. The silence you have been sitting in is not emptiness. It is solitude in its deepest form, full of everything you have been quietly becoming. So if you are building alone right now, without the mentor, without the support, without the door, without the voice that says, "You belong here," keep building. Not because pain is beautiful, it often isn't. Not because struggle is romantic, it's not. But because what grows in the silence, in the pressure, in the necessity, is something real. And real things don't need someone else's approval to stand. They just stand. Your rhythm is not wrong, your shadow is not your enemy, and your solitude is where your individuation lives. Keep building.